Welcome to Transform Now, the podcast brought to you by robotic process automation pioneer SS&C Blue Prism. Digital transformation has the potential to reshape the way companies service their customers, engage their employees, and manage their operations. Whether you're looking to develop strategies, tactics, or best practices to positively impact the future of work, or you're curious to see how other companies have successfully navigated their digital transformation programs, then this podcast is for you. We're here to help you transform now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Marchuk. Welcome to the Transform Now podcast. Our very special guest on this episode is Tim Bottke. Tim is a senior strategy partner at Deloitte and an associate professor for strategy and digital transformation at SBA Bocconi, Financial Times, Forbes, Bloomberg Businessweek Top 5 European Business School. He has more than 22 years of top management consulting and digital transformation experience working with clients in more than 20 countries. Tim has most recently written a book called Digital Transformation Payday, Navigate the Hype, Lower the Risks, Increase Returns on Investments. And we'll be talking to him about that today. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for the invitation.
So I know the 22 years can't be summarized in 3 sentences. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you came to writing this book?
Actually, yeah, I've been a consultant for many years, and you know how consultants are, so they don't like not having answers. And what actually happened, I was in a meeting with a CEO, a long-term client of mine, and he more or less said, look, Tim, I'll be in this role for 2 more years, and then I want to move on to something bigger. And we both know that this company needs to transform. So I'm still wondering, am I better off just wearing jeans and trainers and asking IR to just paint our annual report with some digital and then invest 30 million in a few startups, an incubator, accelerator, you name it, do some pilots? Or am I better off doing what we both know what really needs to be done, which is spending $500 million to renovate most of our legacy systems, hundreds, all not renovated for a long time, very likely with a lot of pain, no clear positive messages for some time, and the benefits will come when I'm long gone. So he said, look, I will do the second part if you can tell me that you have proof that actually the market cap or the value of my shares will increase if I start this journey. Tell me. And I didn't have an answer. And I don't like not having an answer. So then I looked for an answer and I couldn't find one quickly. So the typical way, look, there must be something, come back to him. And that's then when I started going back into research, going back into academia, because there were so many, you know how many articles are there on digital transformation, but no one had the answer. So I realized I need to find it myself. That was naive because I thought it would be quick. It took a few years, but I know I have it. And it was worth it. And I'm very happy now to discuss what came out of this journey.
I am so excited about going through it because I have read the book and it's amazing. Yeah. So the first question I wanted to ask, and I know it sounds basic, but what is digital transformation anyway?
It's actually the best question ever because it's such a simple question. So you would assume that if you go out and try to find a good answer, you would get one. But actually there's neither in practice nor in academia, nowhere, there is like one common definition of what digital transformation means. So everyone has its own. It always centers around the same thing. So it's kind of going in loops again, back and forth. And the one thing which I think everyone agrees is that the transformation part of this definition is the real important one. Because you can do so many things in digital. You can digitize processes. You can have a web shop. But that's all not what digital transformation means. Digital transformation means it has to be a journey towards an end. And the end, and I think we will discuss that at some point in time today, I hope so, it has to be based on strategy. And what does strategy mean? It means that you do all this, not because digital is cool or because you've written it in a newspaper or because some vendor came to you saying, look, if you implement this software, you are safe. You do it because it helps you to win in the marketplace. And that's what digital transformation is all about. It's a tool. It's not a means by itself. It's a tool to achieve something, and which hopefully means you succeed in the market. Otherwise, it's just a waste of money, time. Even talking about it without this goal doesn't make much sense.
Well, and we've seen that play out. I mean, yeah, you mentioned in your book that 70% of digital transformation efforts, whatever that can be defined as, obviously,
Hmm.
are unsuccessful. So
Yes.
when we look at the metrics to determine success or something being unsuccessful, what are the right metrics or measures to use to identify success?
That's a good question. And actually, the 70%, that's a funny number, because if you really look deeper and try to find where this is coming from, so you find 70%, it's 75%, 80, 60, and you never find really the true source of where this is coming from. And if you really dig deep, it turns out that companies have been asked, what do they think? And it has never been clear. And that's why the second part of your question is so important. What does success mean? Does it mean a pilot worked? Does it mean you really transformed your company? But how can you define that? Because it's a multi-year journey. There's so many definitions out there what success means that actually for me, and that's part of the key story of the book, for me, it means if you generate value. Sounds very easy, yeah. If you don't generate value, don't do it. But you would be surprised how often companies embark on journeys, really spending millions, billions, trillions as over industries. And the outcome is not really clear. So in the end, if you would ask me how do you measure success, you need to generate value and not in a tiny pocket, because that's just a pilot, but at scale, transforming your company to something which will still be there in a few years and the following years to come. And the easiest way to measure value, and that's how I do it in the book, is based on market cap. That's one stream, but there's also another stream. Obviously, there need to be business cases. I don't believe in people saying, look, and let's forget about everything which ever worked in business. For digital, you don't need a business case. If you do it, you found the holy grail, just go on and be happy forever. So there has to be a business case, but it's also very clear that shareholders, they don't get to see the business case if you don't tell them. So there's no direct link between what you do in your internal Excel sheets and how the market is assessing what you really do. And that's what the book is all about.
That's good. The discussion you mentioned there in terms of, sort of digital washing everything to make it look like it's like we're doing something or whatever, creating value because everyone else is doing it. Do you see that as organizations who are, again, I don't know how to describe this even, more digitally mature, does that help them achieve these payoffs that they're looking for, or is it something else?
Actually, the digital maturity is a very misused tool. Because how does it work? So you just define some criteria. Okay, I don't know, in the front end, in the back end, I think there are more frameworks for digital maturity out there than anyone can count. So I stopped counting at some point in time. You define some criteria, then you define what mature means. It's all subjective. Okay, so then you put in what do best companies do. And that's probably then the best on your maturity scale. And that's perfect for consultants. And for everyone else who want to make a living out of this, then you just paint the company you want to motivate to change somewhere below. Okay, so then you say, look, the great people do this and that, and you poor guys, you're only here. So you need to change. Just do what the others do, and then you'll be there. But we both know that's not how strategy works. If you just do what someone else has already done, it might help in your sector if your sector is really behind and you just copy stuff from sectors more advanced, but it's not really moving the needle. So no, whatever mature means doesn't automatically mean that you generate value. Because we often see in some sectors and industries, and we see that across the globe, across sectors, if like the top 2 or 3 players in an industry, if they move with the same platforms in the same combination, with the same customization level, even worse with the same consultants, and if they go on a journey for some time, then they're all more mature. Okay, one is maybe half a year faster than the other one, but what does it change in the strategic structure of the market? Nothing. So just being more mature, which is always a measurement point in time, which is backward looking, is not helping. I'm not saying the tool is totally useless. It's good to encourage people to change and to show them that there is a need for action, etc. But there's no value link in it at all, from my perspective.
Right. And what I think is very interesting is that you started going into these 5 elements of a digital transformation payback. And I was hoping you give us an overview of those, because I think that really helps define a lot of the things that you were truly talking about through the rest of the book.
Yes. So first, consultants love frameworks. Okay. So that's clear. So yes, I also have a framework in my book, but I'm not saying that a framework can help to solve your issues. So the objective of my framework is rather to show that digital transformation without taking in all the elements which matter doesn't work. And that's why I have these frameworks in there. And the number one part of the framework, an element which really matters, is what we will discuss later, I hope, is strategy. So it doesn't really make any sense to embark on this journey without really thinking through, what do I want to achieve with it? Where do I want to play in the market? How do I want to compete and win against others? And how do operationally I want to achieve this? So that's the first key element, and I'm using the analogy to a chemical reaction process. So you would never build a chemical experiment without thinking first which tube to fit in where and in which order. So it doesn't make any sense to experiment without designing an experiment. The second part is the scope of the real transformation. And in the chemical reaction term, that's what I define as a reactant. So what elements do you use? And that's a very interesting part, because you can start your transformation at the frontier of your business, or even go to new areas, or you can start in adjacent areas of your business, or you can start what is the most painful real thing, is the core. That's what I define as a reactance. And that's very interesting, because very often there might be good arguments to start somewhere where it's easy. I don't know, you in front-end development, or in a little business, not really integrated in your core business, or you even found a new company in a cool city where everyone wears jeans and trainers, as we discussed before. But if you don't think about how to take that back to your core business, it's probably fun, but it doesn't really move the needle for the overall company. So it's no surprise that shareholders will say, look, yeah, it's nice that you've done that experiment, but what does it mean? Will it ever show up in your P&L? And if it doesn't, why should I bother? Then we have what I call the reaction mechanism. And that's a really interesting area, because that's where a lot of focus is on these days. And it's about how agile do you do this? And I think the general idea of agile and the concept is just great. And I think it's really fitting to the digital transformation story we all have. But you won't believe how often people believe that just working on the mechanism fixes the rest. And it doesn't. I'm always saying, so how does it help if you have a very fast and agile team running, and then you find out that they're running completely in the wrong direction because there's no strategy behind? So that has to fit. And very often then companies totally underestimate that just putting agile on every chart doesn't make you agile. You need to reskill, you need the right people, you need to break the barrier between business and IT. There's so many implications which are totally often underestimated. And then you have what I call the product in the chemical reaction process, or in this case, it's the outcome. How do you measure what is then the end result? You can do it on a qualitative way. You can start introducing operational, financial KPIs, etc. What you should never do is saying it's digital, so it cannot be measured. In the end, there might be good reason to digitally transform companies who don't have business objectives. And there are many, but there should be an objective which you can measure. Otherwise, it always gets out of hand. At some point in time, the CFO will have to say, look, enough about all these nice experiments. Someone at some point in time wants to see a payback for what you are doing. And that's why the book is called Digital Transformation Payday. That's what it's all about.
So I wanted to go into that because one of the chapters in your book asks the question on whether digital transformation causes or leads to a payoff. But there are definitely factors that kind of skew towards a payoff? What are some of those factors that would skew a digital transformation program more towards getting that payoff?
There are many factors actually. And first of all, like look, the academic part of me would say you can never prove that there is a cause in between digital transformation and payoff. But what I've shown in the book based on the data is you can at least rightfully say that you have indications that there is a cause. And someone very deep in statistics would say, yeah, but it's not really final proof, but it's much more than what we ever had before. And there are many factors. So the good news is, and that wasn't clear from the beginning, and one result could have been that there's no proof, that you cannot even say that there is a correlation between what companies do in digital and what their market cap is doing. The good news is there is one. So on average, companies who do more in digital, and there is a lot of natural language processing, etc., behind more than 20,000 reports, they are on average, they seem to be more generating value. And there seems to be some indication that there is a cause, but it's very different by company because on average doesn't help anyone. We all know. You know what statisticians say, like if you have your head in the fridge and your feet in the oven, on average you feel fine. And it's the same here. So you need to use this learning and say, but I'm not the average. I'm me. I'm a company. I need to understand what I do. And there you see big differences. For example, you see in the data that companies who pay very high dividends, okay, for them, actually shareholders don't appreciate digital transformation as much as for companies who are, net income negative. And that's very interesting because in every market cap or share price, there is a lot of emotions and there is a lot of subjectivity. So it seems to be that for some companies, the digital transformation story adds a lot of subjective hope, and it can increase your market cap, but at a much higher variance actually. But for other companies, and I had some endorsers on my book who said, look, it's a bit frustrating what you write because I'm a very asset heavy, old fashioned company. And now I understand why whatever I do doesn't have an as high impact as if, a unicorn type company with negative cash flows is promoting that they are so digital, even though I do more than they do. So understanding what type of company you are financially, also how you communicate what you do. Okay, that's also very important. So all these are factors which influence whether there's a payday for you or not.
Gotcha. So we're going to get to this discussion because you mentioned several times about strategy. And I think I have to rate one of the statements you made in your book really resonated with me. It says, without a defined strategy to win, it's better to not even start your digital transformation because it will likely not lead to any sustainable competitive advantage and the related paydays you're hoping for or striving for. Ouch.
Yes.
How can an organization create a winning strategy?
Look, there's so many great ways of doing strategy, and I just believe in a few simple rules. So number one, and that's maybe before we discuss rules, number one is no, the age of strategy is not over with digital. It's quite the opposite. It becomes even more important. And no, it's not about doing PowerPoint or SWOT or whatever. We all agree that there are many tools which, if used in the wrong hands, they are better not used. But what you need to decide really is you need to understand yourself, number one, which is tougher than you might think. Second is you need to define where do you want to play, in which market segments. You cannot play everywhere, that's clear. Some companies might, but you have to define. And then you need to decide, what do I need in order to succeed in this area I've chosen? And what do I need can be digital, but very often it's a combination of many different factors and transforming end to end, where it's not one technology, it's a combination of technologies. They need to be defined and combined in a way that they're not easy to copy. So what does it help if, two retail companies both implement the same omni-channel CRM platform? then they have the same. So what? Someone is happy, whoever implemented, but it doesn't really change and it doesn't help them to win. Okay. And only once you've decided how can you combine all these factors, including digital, into something which is not easy to copy for some time. It's not like, unfortunately, we're in a time where no one can copy where that is lasting very long, but it has to last for at least a moment to make sure that all the money you pour in makes any sense. And once you have this, then you go into this virtuous cycle where you define something, use digital to get there, you leverage what you gained, and then you rethink again and again, and then you have a strategy which is more agile compared to what it used to be. I'm not talking about a plan, a strategic plan. That's a nightmare. I use this often. But you need to work on this in a cycle. You always need to think, if I'm doing this, will it help me to win? And the sad story is often people think it's one technology or it's two. But I think what I explain in more length in the book is it's never one, never two. It's a combination of all the elements we discussed before. So what does a technology help? If your reaction mechanism, so technology as a catalyst, so the starting point, you think the reaction mechanism is not fitting. I don't know, some front-end developers do great stuff, but then in the back end, it hits the waterfall and then it goes into release cycles and game over, That's what it is. So strategy is even more important than it was ever before.
So it sounds like, you talked about the strategy and knowing yourself. I think that knowing yourself as an organization will help you understand what metrics are important to you or what's important to the market to create the value for your individual organization. And that will help then define what winning actually looks like, because it could be different depending on the organization and the market that you're in.
Yes. And I think I have to add one key point. The key point in all this is obviously not only knowing yourself, but also knowing your market and then not copying what others do. I strongly believe that every single great success story we've seen in whatever industry, and whether it's digital transformation or not, always had the creative idea at the beginning, how to do something different, and then to how to scale that to a level where it matters and changes the marketplace. So creativity is at the core of everything.
I totally agree with that, because it just shows that you actually understand your customers and understand how to address them. And then to your point, then to take that novel understanding and really create a solution that is scalable to address all of it in a framework that manages that in a way that you can create the value.
And just to add to that, that's what we also very often see. We think, look, let's just ask our customers. And then whatever they say, we use some digital things just to make it happen. But I believe the really industry changing ideas, yes, you need to understand your customers, but you can also educate them or bring something new, which they didn't think of. And only then you will change the industry as such.
Okay, agreed. So that gets back to that faster horses analogy, right? You have to ask people who don't ever saw a car before, what do you want? Well, I want a faster horse.
Yes. Yeah. So you could also overdo it with all this agile market testing, etc. And it always has to, you always need to take a step back first and think, okay, so how do I want to win in the marketplace?
Yep. So one of the discussions you had there is about accelerators and how these reactions can create, specific outcomes. But then there's accelerators to help drive to those outcomes in a more rapid or agile way. So in the book, you mentioned intelligent automation technologies is considered as an increasingly relevant supply-side technology catalyst. Yes. What are the major payday accelerators using automation technologies?
I think I'm very excited by everything out there on automation. And it's amazing to see that what was actually when it first came up, where if you would be savvy in Excel, you would say, look, it's just a macro on steroids in the end, and it's now marketed as automation technology. But that's how it started, and I think we've come a very long way from that point, and it's now exciting what all these technologies can do. I think the key point is, and that's what I see in my daily life, is the scaling. Because in use cases and pilots, I think every pilot I've seen has been designed that at the end, the project manager, whoever designed it, said, look, what a great success. With this automation in this back office finance function, we've now saved the equivalent of 10 full-time equivalent employees. And we can leverage this gain space so that people can do things that make them happier, and they can focus on the high value impact things. So all these great stories you can find, and it's all true. But if you would then go to the CFO and say, look, what does it mean for you? He would say, look, but I have 80,000 employees. And now you tell me you have this pilot on 10 FTEs. Maybe it's in my function. But now how can I scale it that it affects 2,000 or 3,000 or 5,000? And then you often realize that that's where the real trouble is, because the pilots are often designed to make it work. And the real brain is in how to scale it. And often to scale it, you need to first find clusters which are big enough that you generate scale. And that's then where it gets tricky. Then you enter the customer service areas, okay, where there's a lot of potential, chatbots, automation tech, and all these things. But it's not the easy thing where you just 10 weeks pilot, perfect, done deal. But I'm very excited about this. And if you combine all this with process mining, because that's a real challenge, to find the processes which you can automate. And there are a lot of new developments in this space which are really helping. If you combine these two, then you have a real accelerator for your payday. You also have the accelerators. That's what I show in my book. It's not for free. The Excel macro you can create for free, but automation at scale requires substantial investments in skills, in software licenses, in all the cyber implications and all the data security implications if you go to that level. So there's a lot of things which need to be done, but there you can really generate your payback if you combine both views.
And I think that goes back to our very first discussion that digital transformation is not easy. It has to have a strategy. You have to think it through. You have to understand where you're going and make a commitment to that investment to be able to truly transform how you're approaching the work that you're doing.
Yes. And you know, I think in the book, I have this, it's one of my favorite quotes saying, look, for every complex problem you find, there's a simple answer, which is wrong. Okay. And that's what digital transformation is all about. And I'm really encouraging all my clients on Exco level, on all levels, and saying, look, if you want this to succeed, going back to how we started this discussion, if you want this to work, dear CEO, dear CTO, dear CFO, you cannot afford to not be in some of the details. You cannot afford not to understand what the technology you bet on really does. Not on the PowerPoint, look, this is great new CRM kind of level, but much deeper, because otherwise you will never be able to combine technologies and skills and the right reactant, the right mechanism into something which will make you succeed in the market. And that's a very sometimes frustrating message, because people would say, look, I am the chief commercial officer. Why should I bother about technology? Then I'm saying you should bother more than on anything else, because that will define whether you'll be able to beat your competition, not only your marketing campaigns and your flyers and all this old-fashioned stuff, but the right combination of product, technology, people at the right point in time. That's going to help you.
Very, very good, wise advice there. I appreciate that. So kind of changing gears here for a second. Yeah, you wrote a book. Now, what would I find on your nightstand now? What books would I find on your nightstand right now that you're reading?
Actually, I'm reading it. The interesting thing is I'm always reading in my free time. I'm reading a lot of science fiction. And interestingly, if you're really interested in new technologies, you would find all the stuff. And maybe these people should really work as strategy advisors. Many things happening now, they've been invented by Gibson and all the others we know, and by Neil Stephenson, all these guys. Just read them and you will see what the future will bring. Not perfectly, but I think that's really making you think. And I read a few business books, obviously, all the time. But for the night, I would read science fiction. Business books I read on the plane when I'm traveling.
I understand that. That. So you're reading science fiction, you're getting some insights there and some ideas. What inspires you to go out and continue to seek these kind of solutions? What's inspiring to you?
I think the inspiration always is that when you see the click in people's heads, understanding that it's not about, I don't know, jumping the same train. Everyone is doing digital now because digital is cool and it's the hype. It's when you see people thinking and realizing that if they combine these things the right way, they can create something unique, something which will make their lives easier, but not in the first 2 or 3 years, but at the point in time where the payback is coming, that then they can say, look, we've created something which really changed my position in the market, and I'm just killing my competitors based on what I've done. And I think this moment, that it's not easy to create, but once you create it, that's really inspiring. And then you want to do it again and again, even though it's hard work, as we said.
Yeah, but it's okay. Hard work and inspiration gives you some satisfaction, and that's a good thing. It's a way to drive someone. So, Tim, I really appreciate your insights that you provided for us today, and I will definitely link to your book that is being published now. We'll link to that in the description below in our show notes. Super excited for people to read that because I found a lot of value in it. I think you approached this in a fantastic way. I think the academic in you and the consultant in you work very well to be able to approach this in a way that demonstrates the knowledge, but also demonstrates the way forward. So I would, again, highly recommend this book to folks.
Thanks, Michael.
It really does a great job. So thanks again for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the time. It was a great discussion.
Thanks for tuning in to Transform Now. For more insightful discussions on digital transformation and more, check out our podcast channel where you'll find all of our previous episodes. And to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. And if you like what you've heard, please leave us a review. For more information about digital transformation and the future of work, check out blueprism.com to learn how SS&C Blue Prism's digital workforce is enabling enterprise transformation now.